Welcome to the Parts Party. I'm Adriana,
And I'm Ella.
and this is your invitation to hang out with us and our beautiful guests as we explore the lived experience of internal family systems. We want to share in our common humanity as humans who have multiple parts within us, so we can show you what it really is to honour this model of therapy in our own lives. This is a place for IFS nerds, therapists, enthusiasts, or just anyone who wants to get to know their parts and their self a little better.
So grab a soft drink for your little ones, a tea for your manager parts, and maybe something fancy for your firefighter parts. Because all parts are welcome.
Emma Diamond is a psychotherapist and child and family therapist with 20 years of clinical experience working with complex and relational trauma. Emma has formerly worked for several non-government organisations in the Northern Territory and New South Wales, specialising in complex PTSD and family and domestic violence services, including supporting those affected by the Royal Commission into Institutionalised Childhood Sexual Abuse and for the Department of Justice, New South Wales. Emma is a certified IFS therapist and case consultant, and is Australia's first ever IFS Institute solo lead trainer. She is known for her warmth, her creative and clear facilitation, her supportive and empowering presence, and her love of the natural world, dance, and playfulness. Welcome to the Parts Party, Emma.
I'm really touched to be here. I'm excited, actually, and nervous, but my parts that hate talking about myself have stalled on it, and now I'm like, no, we can do this. But it's great to be here. It's great to be with the two of you, really.
Our excited and nervous parts are here with you. They're welcome.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add to introduce yourself so that our listeners can get to know you a bit better?
Well, there's Emma in roles, and there's Emma beyond roles. I seem to be more interested these days in the Emma beyond roles and just sort of authentically turning up, but really have a lot of really great managers that are aware of what role am I in when. I'll talk about my professional roles and then hopefully I can rest them. At the moment, I am a lead trainer for the IFS Institute. I have a very busy schedule of delivering level 1 trainings and soon level 2 trainings in Australia and New Zealand. I love my work. It's a complete privilege. It is a huge roller coaster, sometimes ordeal, sometimes bliss and heaven. For my system and my parts, gosh, do we get a we? Me, we. Me gets a workout every time, and every time there's growth. Every time I learn more about my own system or about the bigger field. I adore that role, as big and scary as it has been for some of my parts. At the moment, I'm in a role. I'm just starting a level 2 as the lead PA for my mentor in at Bronstein. So I'll be learning from her how to do a level 2 and supporting her. And I had parts going, oh, thank God, I'm not a trainer this time. But I sometimes play that role, and I have played that role in the past. And then the role of case consultant, mainly group supervision in the IFS space. I have a little cohort of clients as a therapist. I have parts that say you don't have enough space or time to really be all those roles. Oh, and then there's the other roles like mother, daughter, somewhere in the really large roles as well. Partner, you've got that. uh, there's lots of roles. But at the moment, I am really delighting in allowing myself more and more space beyond the roles, acknowledging the wholeness of my being, the delight in inhabiting that in so many different ways. It's delicious and difficult. And just, I want to say, I love paradox because it's everywhere I look, like these edges that we experience every day in the pull and push of what it is to be human. Yeah. And I notice the roles that I have, I'm getting more and more familiar with the parts that come up in different roles. They are different. Sometimes there's a lot of crossover, but they're also different.
Hmm. I'm curious what it's like inside for you, Emma. You've talked about parts showing up differently in different ways. What's it like inside?
When you say something out loud, it lands even more.
Mm.
So it's like ka-clunk. That's true. And then I really quickly just had this compare and contrast experience on the inside of going, oh yeah, in that role, I'm more like my performative parts. If there's some nervousness, might pop up, a little bit. But in the role of, oh my goodness, the role of therapist now, when I'm in that role, I have a lot of ease. And there was a time where I did not have that ease in that role. So that's I'm like measuring, where do I really trust myself, really trust my presence and trust my client and trust the process? And in what roles are they still learning how to do that? Probably the biggest one that I'm still learning how to do that is parenting. That is the biggest role. Oh my goodness. That's a big one.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Parenting and training, they're the learning edge, I guess, always. And I have an adult son and a 15-year-old daughter. They're kind of wondrous beings and mysterious to me still.
Forever
Yeah.
teachers.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking of the parallels as you sit in that lead trainer position and we start to work with young parts, that you're kind of the mum to all these hundreds of
Yeah.
different parts that sit in the room. Yeah.
It's a typical phenomena of being in a role of power, especially therapeutic spaces. And for sure, that is there.
There's like 35 students and they've all got a bunch of little ones, a bunch of babies, a bunch of teenagers. How many actual little kids are in the rooms? A lot. Yeah.
Then there's mine.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I can just see them all. Like, hey, Mom, especially my one, to be in that role of lead trainer, I had so many parts as I came into it, so many parts. They said very, very strongly, you need to stay small to stay safe. And so we're quite terrified of stepping into a role that comes with a lot of influence or power or visibility, or it just felt super, super scary to those parts of me. And I luckily got to do a demo on a level 3 with Pam Krause on that theme of staying small to stay safe. It's quite universal. I think somewhere maybe all of us, like that little curling into ourselves to stay safe. It's taken a lot of courage and a lot of multitudes of growing edges all at the same time. And I am getting used to that. I think we have more capacity than a lot of our parts perceive to be in different places all at once, to turn up in the moment and at the same time dig deeper for some courage, and at the same time notice the subtle energetics of a room, and at the same time manages keeping track of time. It's pretty amazing. And we do that as a therapist as well. It's wild, our capacity.
I think of a paradox right there, which is it's that fine line between taking care of yourself and being gentle with yourself, holding that compassion, and then the danger of that going into coddling and not going past that growth edge that you need to do.
Yes.
And that requirement for leaning into the courage and those more action focused C qualities that push you past that growth edge. And you don't want it to be led by a part that's going, no, you need to do that, and pushing too much too soon so that you burn out or it's too overwhelming.
It's like the feeling of being stretched,
Yeah.
On the first day of a level 1 training, we introduced this idea of being safely uncomfortable. That's where we're asking people to hang out on that edge of safely uncomfortable. It's a big ask for some part, but it is how we learn. It's paradoxical edge. I'm learning to be permanently on and hang out with my parts on. Yeah, that is growth. I got a visual of plants as they grow. It's so incremental. It's hard to perceive in real time, but it is that the growth is happening on that edge, and it's reaching for something more. Yeah, becoming something more. But we don't know what we're becoming when we're growing. We don't know where we're going necessarily.
Leaning into that unknown, trusting it.
It's a big ask if there's lots of experiences of that being really scary, unsafe, not ending up with good results, leading us places that take us on stories of trauma or,
Mm. Would you like to share a little bit about how you actually came to IFS and your journey to experiencing yourself as a
Mm,
system of parts?
yeah. I spent a lot of years working in the trauma field. I worked a lot with children and families as a child and family therapist. I started working in Alice Springs. I lived in the desert for quite some time, and I started working with Aboriginal clients out on country and communities, but also in town camps in Alice Springs. I think 90% of my clients were Indigenous, and I work with Indigenous therapists, and so the context was what I now know. I didn't know then, but I now know as hip trauma, which is historical, intergenerational, persistent, and personal. Like the layers, the dimensions. Really wanted to do a good job, but we're left sort of going, how can I deliver a therapeutic intervention in this? It's a parts very driven to get to the answers. How do I work with this? Did lots of deep dives on all the trauma therapies. This is in like 2006, 7, the mid 2000s. Sort of landed with Janina Fisher's work, structural dissociation and polyvagal. I guess I remember trying to apply all those theories and those understandings. Landed with the conclusion of, okay, well, if I give those kids an attuned experience of safety and they get to express or have a witness of what their lives are, they feel that in their bodies, and that relationship is a relationship that they can reference in their future, not necessarily access the therapist, but they can know what that feels like. Just so many parts of me, it never felt like enough, but it was something. I left the Central Desert and came to Coffs Harbour, near where I live. I live in Bellingen in New South Wales, and continued to work with underprivileged clients, victim services, kids in out-of-home care, all that kind of frontline stuff. Did a lot of training in something called dyadic developmental psychotherapy. Dan Hughes is a attachment-based family therapist, really on how to awaken love in the unloved child. Very beautiful, beautiful work. I did a lot of training in that field, and it was incredibly relational, and it was incredibly attuned, and it was funny and playful and curious and goofy and expressive, and I just loved it. And I guess I've always oriented towards the relational. When in doubt, connect. Connection's everything, and it's at the heart of IFS. That's what we're about, and that's what we need as human beings. We just do. And I had a supervisor at the time who was getting towards retirement, and she had said, I think this would have been in 2014, 15. We had a complex mental health network, local ones, and delivering different insights and guest speakers on different therapeutic interventions and modalities. And she said, hey, I've heard of this IFS. It seems to be making sense. And she's deeply steeped in structural dissociation work. And she said, I'm retiring. You should apply to go to this intro. And I did some intros with Simon and Bonnie Weiss and took to it like a duck to water. I really understood the other trauma approaches, but this felt so much more user-friendly to me. Just felt very intuitive. It felt like, this is integrated, all those things, and it's the how. It's the how. Oh, my goodness. Then launched into completely profound deep dive on IFS, and I was lucky enough to be a participant on the first level one in Australia.
Wow.
And then PA'd like crazy. I had a sense, maybe it's that edge of, I want to get good at this. I think IFS can be intuitive. It can make a lot of sense. We can get it up here, but, the application of it can be really tricky. Each system that we see is a completely unique system. And as the therapist, we have to learn about how to take this and apply it to that. There's a lot of nuance, so much nuance in that application. So that's how I found it. And how I came to my own system, actually, that same supervisor, bless her, every now and then she's retired now, but I see her in the street, and I live in a small town. I can't help it. I burst into tears and give her a big hug. She gifted me a lot. our mentors and our supervisors and our teachers, so many gifts. She helped me to explore what was clearly evident to her but not to me, which was the way in which my system had been shaped and rewarded to be in role. And that role was helper, attend to others, and attend to others through compassion, empathy, presence, bring yourself to them, and could sense and feel that I didn't have any differentiation between me and that part. Or I'd call them a cohort, a team, still discovering, and could see that I didn't have a sense of innate worth, no sense of that innate worth. I just knew that what was worthy about me was this role. I'm going to speak for me, but I think I speak for other people as well. When our gifts become our role, what we're good at, our parts learn and are rewarded to be good and approved of, then they can become quite tangled of like, I don't know any other way of being, or I don't know how I can bring my gift without having to be blended with a very powerful protector. And that protector brought me worth, it brought me connection, it brought me purpose, it brought me meaning. I mean, this started super early for me, and my system's classically parentified. And so she could see that. One day in one of our sessions turned up for me in a way that, asked maybe one question or two questions, which is, what would it be like if you just didn't have to be anything for me and you could let me be here with you? And I kind of fell to pieces, that experiential moment being like, wow, you mean I don't have to be something for you in order to get your love? It was kind of profound and breakthrough, and it also started to get me in touch with exiles that I think are probably connected to more around emotional neglect or a neglect of presence or neglect of connection. When you don't have that, there's a sense on the inside of I don't really exist. Or who am I? If I'm not in the role, who am I? A kind of void or a nothing. And I still have parts that hold that experience of not knowing who they are without being something to someone, helping. So I continue to work on that, and I can see and I'm seeing more and more how many kind of like, I guess, self-mirroring parts I can have around being in role. Yeah. So still working on it. That's how it came into my system. Very grateful for that. I'm learning every day something new about my system.
Such powerful work.
Yeah, really.
And how do your parts show up? Is it somatic? Do you kind of see them as symbolized or little yous? Or
I'm doing this dance practice where I get up and dance from 6:30 till 7:30 a.m. It's a 5 rhythms dance, and I do 5 rhythms dance here locally, one day a week. I realized actually the morning's a better time for me, for my system to dance. And I've realized that within that dance, I can access my parts. It's somatic, but it's expressive. And I can embody, come in, blend, take over, go for it, do what you need to do. So it's somewhere between somatic and expressive, and that also includes drawing. If I'm ever like fully spiraling or parts party or stacks on, it's just chock a block inside. The quickest way for me to unblend is to draw it out. By drawing, I just mean blobs, shapes, colors. So I guess maybe the expressive arts, how I access my parts. I remember one of the level ones we had an unusual amount of art therapists on one of our level ones. And it was super cool because even as I was lecturing or as we're doing experientials, there's like paint box, there's crayons, and they're just constantly using the expressive arts to work with their parts. And I think I'm one of them. I can do powerful work by going inside, absolutely, and have done. I sense them more than see them, and that's an unusual thing to say because I'm highly visual. I can see and sense when I'm doing a session my client's parts and what they're describing very vividly. Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Isn't it?
I'm not visual at all in my system, and I'm very somatic, sensory, and very, I wouldn't say language based. They're not saying words to me, but I get the answer in my head from parts when I communicate with them. It's beyond language. It feels telepathic in a way. I'm curious when you work with your parts, because I'm hearing it's really embodied, expressive. You need that almost like a body movement to connect with them. Do you get information? Do you dialogue with your parts?
I loved how you said that, Adriana. It made me think of like an energetic download. Yeah, full comprehension beyond words. Sometimes it's a dialogue. Sometimes it's an energetic download. Sometimes it's a full and immediate visual. Yeah, like when we did that little meditation beforehand, Ella, I had a clear words come. I don't know what the word is for having a system that has many ways of expressing itself that aren't predictable particularly. I think that's me.
And probably different parts have different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you be open, Emma, to giving us an example, trailhead or a tormentor that is an example of how your parts show up?
This I did a bit of prep for. Question.
You got to get consent from all the parts, don't you, to say this? Yeah.
Can I read a story?
Please.
It's not
you're
a long
welcome.
one. Every now and then I get a circle back to a teacher that I got into in my 20s. I was having a conversation with someone. Oh, this is the perimenopausal brain. It's a sieve. I don't know who it was or when it was. I've got it now. It was a client. She started telling me about, she was reading The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. And I just had this really quick, remembering of the age I read that book. And a lot of it came back to me. And recently I've had Pema Chodron circling back after years. And Pema Chodron, there's a book that I've got called The Places That Scare You, really helped me through a very difficult time in my life before I found IFS. I get this thing, a supervisee sent me this great little story on email the other day, and it was about Pema Chodron. And I was like, you know, the synchronicities. Pema Chodron's in my field right now, her wisdom. So I'll just read it to you. It was a reflection. It was a therapist reflecting on an experience. Back in 1992, I attended a 3-month Buddhist seminary. The rhythm was 2 weeks rigorous study followed by 2 weeks stretches of silence. The principal teacher was a young Tibetan who was just starting to teach. Pema Chodron served as a secondary teacher. Midway through the program, the head teacher pulled Pema aside and told her it was time to take a back seat. She became disoriented. Her teaching career was rising. She was getting book deals. She was gaining recognition. Why are they asking me now to be invisible? Wrestling with her place, she ran to the teacher and asked for clarity. He looked at her and said, "You need to learn how to be both big and small at the same time." I think about this often. It is one of the deeper teachings on leadership and care that I've come across. The best teachers are always students. The best students are also teachers. And every one of us is asked again and again to be big enough to bring our gifts forward and small enough to let the work be about something larger than ourselves. As clinicians, this is the paradox at the heart of our work. You may have extraordinary skills, you have invested a lot of money in your graduate training and beyond, plus thousands of hours into study and practice. You hold profound insight, yet the transformation belongs to the client. It is not your story that is unfolding in the room, it is theirs. At the same time, you are a force. You are a carrier of knowledge, presence, and experience that can open doors for another human. You matter, your training matters, your voice matters. So how do we be both big and small at the same time? How do we hold our seat without being the center? How do we step forward without overshadowing the very people we aim to serve? This is not a problem to solve. It is a koan, a way of walking, a way of caring. And perhaps this is the deeper invitation for our field, to become the kind of practitioners who can bow and rise at the same gesture, to become people who can carry wisdom lightly, to become teachers who never stop learning and learners who understand that wisdom flows in both directions. May we keep finding that balance together. And so trailheads right now for me are that koan of finding the right amount of big and small and listening to that kind of adjustment. I notice that I have parts. If I'm nervous, if I am not as prepared as some of my managers want me to be, if I detect some kind of conflict in a room, I have parts that can take over and get big and take up too much space. I notice performative parts if I'm nervous that might be bigger than I really feel authentically. I might have kind of protectors, I guess, that puff up when there's conflict in a room that don't actually, that's not the response that's needed. Getting familiar with how much space I take up as I train, or how much space I take up as I do therapy with my clients. Am I taking up too much space, or am I being too small? There are times where our client, our supervisee, participants, whatever it is, need us to lean in and provide, whether it be that wisdom or that facilitation or that guidance. And so that koan, that was very helpful for me to receive that reading, because I'm like, yeah, that's my koan, that's my practice now. And it's my trailhead ongoing. Part of that is that part that goes, no, stay small to stay safe. Yeah.
Had a settling inside as you read it, because there is just so much that tension of stay out of the way, let them, and then be present, be with, hold, and just that koan. It can be both, and that's the magic.
Yeah. Have you ever had that experience as the client of either going, I need you to lean out, I just need you to give me more silence so I can do more connecting on the inside? Or, where are you? I need more of you. You know?
Yeah, open your eyes. Are you still there? Are you with me?
Yeah, are you there? Can you say something now?
Yeah.
So it's that thing. I'd like to talk about it more. I'd like to explore it more as a theme, because it's hard. Have a therapist, supervisee, a supervisor or a trainer. It's hard to really to get a really clear sense of how much do you need me to be big and how much do you need me to be small, or lean in or lean out. And that asks, like, feedback is for me very precious.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Yeah. It's probably the thing that helps me grow the most.
My therapist often says, if I'm just with an exile, like, is she still telling me something? Like, just to check, am I just sitting there in silence, or am I having this experience? Because you can't really know from the outside all the time.
No, you can't know, like, so much of what's happening inside, we really don't know. What a bizarre profession. So we have to sit with the mystery every day, all day.
Yeah, but you can kind of feel, you can.
It's sensing.
Know some things, strangely.
Yeah, the sensing is palpable, hey? And every now and then you get those beautiful moments of what you're sensing and what's coming through you is spot on, and it lands and it opens, and and I guess that takes us to self energy.
I also think about when you're working with exiles, and if they are unburdening, it can look from the outside sometimes really distressing to watch, because you could be somatically processing, and you got to examine your parts and your ability to sense as a therapist, because if you're getting distressed watching them in distress, but actually it's just the body somatically processing, and there is a critical mass of self in the client to be able to handle that. That's where that checking in, like, is this manageable? And from the outside, if I'm processing, it can look intense. And then I just had, myself just need to go, I'm okay, by the way, but I'm just processing,
great.
to give that feedback to know it's tolerable. But as therapists, we have to toe that line, manage our own parts, and that can get distressed seeing someone else in distress.
Yeah, those little ones that often get that empathic distress. Oh no, are they okay?
I think you told me about the direct access video with Friend Booth, that training. And I was watching a demo that Dick did with a client that was processing a trauma from childhood. And from the outside, it looked extreme. He had a bucket because he wanted to vomit and all of that. And Dick's just on stage and he's completely calm, holding that. And he kind of interjected in the video for us viewers to watch, going, yeah, some of you may have questions about, should I be jumping in here? Is this too much? But really, I could tell that he had enough, he had that critical mass of self in his own system to be able to process this safely. And that's why I was able to step back the amount that I did. But God, it takes a lot of trust and knowing in yourself that you can't, when's appropriate to step in and out.
I guess the question is, like, are you okay to be with this? And that's a question that can go both ways. To our client and within ourselves. Yeah.
I was sharing with you recently, Emma, a quote from Superman that really resonated with me, which is just the original Superman movie. Lois is falling through the air and Superman catches her and he goes, "Don't worry, I've got you." And then she goes, "Yeah, but who's got you?" And that's the thing. We need to know that we can handle it, even if, say, the client says, I've got this, but if you're there dysregulated and that's causing dysregulation in the space as well, we need to have that trust. So the client knows, hey, you've got this too. You can handle me. You can hold this with me.
Yes.
Such a fine line.
It is a fine line and it's a dance. And it's a process of our parts, our system learning to trust. Learning to trust us as a therapist, learning to trust our client, that when they say, I'm okay to be with this, they really are. And learning to trust the process, which that in and of itself is a process. We have to do it enough to really go, this works. And wow. And sometimes a tough session, I won't say it's tough, an intense session where there's a lot of affect and there's a lot of unburdening happening. At the end of it, our parts can go, oh, like that kind of like jellifying that can happen, and it's important to turn up for our parts in those moments and let them know that, that's the process. That's what it's like. That's what we're doing here. And look, our client was okay and we're okay and good things happened. Healing happened. Take it in. Learn to, and that's how they can learn. Our parts can learn to trust it by really experiencing it, whether it be our own work or the work that we do with our clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said once, Emma, like IFS, the framework is just very reliable. And when I'm in one of those moments in a session, like kind of holding on, like, whoa, where are we going? What's going to happen? I often hear that, like, just trust the framework, just, relax, keep going. We know where we are on that map. So.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it can be parts clinging to it, going, okay, I'm just going to radically trust this thing.
Which F am I up to? Fine, focus into it.
Yeah. And on that, I when I was first learning IFS, I had cheat sheet with me for 2 years. The amount of time it takes for parts to learn to trust you.
And will you share something about how self-energy shows up in your system, Emma?
I adore stillness and silence. The most powerful experiences I have of self. I feel entirely held in a silent depth, entirely present. There's not a lot of noise from my parts. There's often not a lot of cognition either. It's a beautiful simplicity. Can I go back to Pema Chodron? Because we talk about self. Whenever I teach on self, I really pay my respects to just so many different parts that know this ineffable thing, which we are calling self. I've got this quote from Pema Chodron, and I picked it up the other day. How many years later? 15 years later. I actually have parts that really like reading out loud. I read out loud to my partner. I really enjoy it. I like being read out loud too. I read it the other day and I was like, Buddhism. It's the kind of like, for me, a bit of the OG stuff, pieces on self. If we were to ask the Buddha, what is bodhicitta? He might tell us that the word is easier to understand than to translate. He might encourage us to seek out ways to find its meaning in our own lives. He might tantalize us by adding that it is only bodhicitta that heals, and that bodhicitta is capable of transforming the hardest of hearts and the most prejudiced and fearful of minds. Citta means mind and also heart or attitude. Bodhi means awake, enlightened, or completely open. Sometimes the completely open heart and mind of bodhicitta is called the soft spot, a place as vulnerable and tender as an open wound. It is equated in part with our ability to love. Even the cruelest of people have this soft spot. Even the most vicious animals love their offspring. I read it and I was like, that's self. It's in every tradition. And it's got this wonderful, ineffable quality that it's hard to put into words. When I'm dancing, that's kind of my quickest way to self, and it feels like freedom. It feels like surrender. It feels like, I guess it's, see, the trouble of finding words about it. In session, I feel like if I had a visual for what's happening in session, is there's a quantum of self and presence, and there's my really very skilled parts that are somehow feeding that with a little bit of direction or a little bit of sensing into big and small or a little bit of running theories or a little bit of sometimes my curious cat, which is very self-mirroring because it's curious, hey, but it's more like I want to sniff things out here. And it's got its own pleasure. It's sort of, its agenda is for itself. It's not necessarily for my client. So got to keep an eye on curious cat. Yeah, it just feels really normal and natural that in session there's my present, the self that I can bring, and there is also my parts that are definitely in the room that I am more and more familiar with. And they're resources.
Yeah.
Not always. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that can be a little bit of a misunderstanding when first coming to IFS, that parts, we just need to get them to step back so we can be in self. But like you said, Emma, they have so much wisdom, knowledge, information, and skill. We need them. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need my parts. I love just the non-dual way of thinking of like self and parts always.
Yeah. And parts with self. Parts have self.
Parts with. Yeah, absolutely. We're all like this beautiful tapestry. It helps me. It helps me to visualize. When I start a level 1, there's 50 universes in the room. Some of them I know a little about. Some of them I have no idea about, but magnificent constellations are going to happen. All sorts of constellations are going to happen. There's so much to discover. Parts have a real tendency to take their responsibility like a heavy burden, the role with heavy burden. This is a universe, like I'm just passing through, and hopefully giving them the tools to know how to discover more about themselves and others and how to heal.
It's that balance of big and small again, what it means for us if what's going on with their universe, that reflects on us somehow, when really it's, hey, we can be with their universe in whatever way, but it doesn't mean anything about us. It doesn't reflect on us.
Yeah. It eases my parts that go, it's my responsibility, and I have to make
Mm.
sure that they get this model and they look at their parts. Or, like,
I'm not so small that I have no impact. I can be there with them. And I'm not so
Yeah.
big that it's my responsibility to be with or fix
Yes.
anything.
Mm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Adriana, you got it. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for gifting us with some of your presence and wisdom and insights today.
It's been a real pleasure. I feel like we've touched on things that I'm just contemplating right now, that I'm exploring in myself. Yeah, it's really good to be with you.
What a gift. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the Parts Party with Adriana and Ella. We hope you enjoyed being with us, and we wish you many moments of self-leadership. We'd love your support by liking, subscribing, sharing this podcast, and we hope to see you next time.